How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Just quickly wanted to say I appreciate all the support. It's been crazy recently. We hit over 1,000 subscribers not too long ago, and yeah, the support for the channel has been great, so I really appreciate it. But let's get straight into it. What programming language should you learn first? And it's a question that might seem like, some people, honestly, the best answer is just, it doesn't matter. Like, it matters, but honestly, it's better to just get straight into programming rather than like thinking about like, oh, should I choose this one or that one or this one? The best one is just whatever you can get your hands on immediately. But beyond that, I think it's also worth considering like, okay, which one is going to be better in the long run learning? And it's typically the one that's recommended always, we'll just learn Python. And it might seem like a good one. Python is relatively easy to learn. It's pretty useful. It's very modern, so there's many benefits to it. But I think in the long term, it might have some like damages. It's not like your brain's gonna be destroyed from Python. But I think a better choice might be a language like C. And I'll explain why. So C, if we look at the most popular programming languages, last year was JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But we can see like these are all like not really like JavaScript is, but Python is like a proper programming language in terms of like it's to do with like stuff not outside of web development, and like data and all that. So Python is very like general. It's a very general purpose. And then we got TypeScript, Java. You got all these other stuff, but Python is essentially the most popular one. And then if we also look at the most loved languages, we can see Rust is very well loved, but if we scroll down, we can see that Python here is also very much loved. And if we compare that to the lower ranking, if we see like C is down here, it's more like hated than it is loved. And I think the problem with Python is that it's too good. Like it's too good in many ways that essentially that I feel like you can become like a Python brainlet. In my uni course right now, what we're learning is Python. We're learning Python. That's the main programming language that they teach you. And it's very good. Honestly, like I never touched Python before this. I only touched C. And Python is genuinely and objectively a good language. It's very easy to work with. You can program a lot of stuff, a lot more difficult problems in a much easier way compared to if you were to do it with C. However, learning a so-and-so harder language, like a lot of people say it's better to learn Python and then go to harder languages. But I think C, especially if you do it through the CS50 course, if you abstract the difficulties at the start, for example, there isn't something called a string. There isn't a string data type. There's a char star. There's a char, what do you call it? Char array. You got an array of characters. That's essentially what a string is. But in Python, you naturally have that, and you don't have to declare and do all this other stuff. I think if you start out with Python, an easier language, to move from that to a harder language such as C or Java or any other language, I don't know, maybe Rust. I'm not too sure how Rust works, to be honest, but these other types of languages, you might be stuck in the mode set that you're like, oh, like it's not Python, and you're just like, you're gonna hate it. Whereas if you start from something harder, you have nothing to relate to. If you only have C, that's the only thing you've experienced. If that's your foundation, it's a lot easier to see like, okay, Python's really good in this like these aspects. It's very good in that. But looking at this other language, you can see why this language is also good. Whereas if you're comparing it to Python, where Python has a solid foundation, to you, looking at anything else, it's going to be a lot worse. It's going to be like, C's worse. It's just, yeah, sure, it's faster, but it's just harder to do stuff, and you just won't touch it all. You won't be willing to learn something like C++, which is very useful for large-scale projects, because it's essentially like C, but with object-oriented programming, which allows for like it says right here, like large-scale software. It can be very fast and also be very memory efficient and all that. It's used for game development most of the time. So if you want to get into like game development, let's say, then to go from Python to C++, it's going to be like, like you're just going to hate it. And you might even consider quitting just because like, it's like too hard if you can't be bothered. But if you go from C to C++, the transition is going to be a lot more natural because it's based on it, So you're just learning some new stuff and some new syntax and all that. But overall, it should mostly be the same. Although I've never touched C++, so I can't say for sure. But it's mostly the same. I I have another unit that I'm doing where it's Java development. And even Java, for me, it's like it's very similar to C. Like I can tell that it's based on C. It works a lot in the same way as C, but it's essentially just object-oriented programming. Like it's OOP. That's the only difference. And, you know, there's some syntactic differences, but overall it's the same thing. So yeah, that, I think for me, because I started out on C, it really let me like see the different benefits of each language. Whereas if you started from Python, you're going to be very like closed-minded. And again, like Python is very good, but it's also very slow. And that's the reason why Python is good for learning, but I'm not going to say this for 100%, but to my knowledge, for like very large scale things, like they'll use it for machine learning because I think it abstracts it, like the difficulty of machine learning very well, that it's worth it. But for other stuff, usually they don't use Python. They will use something like C++ or C# or something like that, because it's just, when you're really trying to get speed and memory efficiency, it's not all there. You know, Python is a slow language. It's compiled and interpreted. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say though. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have my thoughts. Start out with C. Start out with the CS50 course. I have another video that I'll link in the card about how you can get started into programming. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.